In today's episode, we will be giving our picks for UFC303. We're brought to you by the beautiful state of New Hampshire on the Pemi something river. I'm joined by a very special guest, a UFC expert, Mr. Bert Novak. Do you want to give an introduction or you want to just get right into this?
Let's get right into it, baby.
Alright.
Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up.
Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the Dub Cast. So, seeing as though we're in the fucking middle of the wild with no connection or anything, I gotta pull out my notes. So, as usual, I did my picks for every fight and analysis, going through everything. We'll see what we end up taking here. I'm going to give Mr. Novak some helpful picks. I'll give you, how many picks do you have for your betting card?
Official picks, I got 5 official picks.
Alright, he's going to give you 5 picks. I'm going to give you 3. Leading off, my UFC record so far on the Dubcast is at 4-5. Looking to go over 500 here. We'll see what happens. And before we start, we should talk about probably the shuffling of the deck of this card, as it was supposed to be Conor McGregor. We were all waiting for Conor McGregor, but he broke his toe, so he's not going to be out here. Olberg is out, Jamal Hill is out. This whole card basically shifted into something completely different within 3 weeks. So a lot of short notice fights, but we're always going to make some picks. So do you have any thoughts on the card switching hands a million times, or do you don't think that impacts it a lot?
I mean, I think I could have called McGregor not fighting. I think it was too good to be true, and that's it, I guess.
Alright, with that being said, let's jump into our new 303. So starting off, as usual, with the early prelims. Our first fight is a bantamweight bout between Ricky Simon, who's minus 235, and Vinicius Oliveira, who's plus 190. So I'll give my analysis on the fighters, and then if you have anything to add, and then we can
Yeah, I'm not going to have much on these prelims, but...
Alright, it's going to be mostly me on the prelims. So our boy Ricky Simon, he has notable wins over Jack Shore. He actually beat Merab, and he lost to Yadong and Rob Font and Uriah Faber, however you say his name. Usually he wins by decision, but there's some submissions and knockouts mixed in there, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak right now. He usually fights around once a year in the last 3 years since COVID, so he's not the most active fighter. And then we go to our underdog, Vinicius Oliveira. He's got a 3-inch height advantage for my height people out there. He only has 1 fight in the UFC, 1 fight in the Dana White Contender Series. Both of them were knockouts, and I looked at his resume. He hasn't really fought anyone notable yet. So, per usual, when I look at do you have anything you want to say about either of these guys?
Don't know him.
Per usual, when I look at the first fight in the card, this is usually a skip because it's 2 guys in the UFC that they don't have long storied careers. We don't really know what they're about, what their style is, how they'll do in the UFC. So I don't really have a pick in this fight. I think if I had to pick, I'd say it ends early. I think if you're looking for underdogs and chasing odds, Oliveira could be a decent bet here, but I'm not taking anything from this fight to add to my official card, and you're not either, right?
No.
So with that being said, we'll jump right into the next one. We have a flyweight bout between Ray Teixeira versus Carlos Hernandez. Ray Teixeira is minus 550. Carlos Hernandez is plus 375. Our boy Ray, the major favorite, is undefeated, 9-0. This is his first UFC fight, but he has fought 3 fights in something called Road to the UFC, which I'm not sure what that is. And through his wins, he's done it in all ways, mostly knockouts and submissions. He's only won 1 decision. And then our other fighter, the big underdog, Carlos Hernandez, he's got a 2-inch height advantage. He's 3-2 since joining the UFC. He hasn't really fought anyone notably to win or lose to. And when he's lost, it's been early, but when he wins, it's by decision. So my picks and analysis for this one, I think it's a setup for Ray to get a win and move up the rankings to fight someone better. He's undefeated. The UFC likes to protect the undefeated guys. I'd frankly be shocked if Hernandez won this fight, but I think if he did somehow win, it would be by decision. And with the variance in Ray's ways of winning, I don't think I'm comfortable taking submission, knockout, or anything like that. So we'll see how this fight ends. Another one I'm not touching. You're not touching this either, right?
Nope, not touching it.
So our next fight on the early prelims is a heavyweight bout between Andrei Arlovsky, who's plus 210, and Martin Budet, minus 260. So go to Andrei Arlovsky, the underdog. He has a long UFC career. He's been around since 2014, so 10 years in the UFC. He's lost to Stipe, Overeem, Francis Ngannou, Tai Tuivasa, Rosenstrike, and Aspinall. He has no really notable wins, but when he does win, it's by decision. He usually goes down mostly in decisions. So talking about Martin Budet, his opponent, he is 17 pounds bigger. Being in the heavyweight division, they have the variance in weights here, so that's something to keep note of. He only has one loss in the UFC, which came in December of 2023 to Gaziev, and he only has one submission in the UFC. The rest are decisions. Do you have anything on either of these guys?
No.
No. All right.
You took Budet though, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna talk about it. So, my analysis, I think Arlovsky's a punching bag. I just read off 7-8 names of guys that basically are good now that probably he was used as a stepping stone against. He's got a good UFC career because he can win fights against nobodies and lose to the people they need him to lose to. So I really like Budet in this fight. I'm not going to throw him on my card for my official card, but I probably will bet on him to win by decision because I think it's a good enough odds where you can actually make money in that. Also, I forgot to mention Arlovsky is 45 years old, so that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, Budet by decision, we'll be betting on it, but I'm not going to add it to the official card because it's kind of a long shot in terms of picking the decision and all that. So now we'll move to our next fight, which is a strawweight women's fight between Michelle Waterson-Gomez, who's plus 155, and Jillian Robertson, who's minus 185. So Michelle Waterson-Gomez, she is on a 4-fight lose streak. She's 38 years old, and she's 1-6 in her last 7 fights. Maybe why she's a little bit of an underdog in this fight. So most of her losses are by decision that she has been submitted or knocked out. And she has notable losses to Joanna, Lemos, Esparza, Rose Namajunas, and she beat Angela Hill, who that doesn't really do much for me. And her opponent is Jillian Robertson. She's also been in the UFC a long time. She lost to Mayra Bueno Silva, who's out on this card, I think, Tabitha Ritchie, Miranda Maverick, and Macy Barber. And when she wins, she pulls off submissions or knockouts. Do you have anything you want to say about either of these?
I will say, in a lot of women's fights, I will check to see if they have high finish rates, and if most of their wins or losses are decisions, I will take a women's fight going the distance a lot. But for both the women's fight on this card, both of them have high finish rates, so I'm definitely going to stay away from taking going the distance. But
yeah,
other
well,
than that,
yeah, as a usual dubcast special is the one who fights to go the distance, but I don't like this one to go the distance.
yeah.
My official picks, I think, let me get to it. I don't think it goes the distance. It seems like Robertson could end this early, and I don't really have much confidence in her either, though, because Michelle Waterson-Gomez has been around a while. You know, anything can happen for these people that are right about to retire. They might get their last win and go out, so I'm staying away from this one too. So far, early prelims, nothing. So that's going to wrap up the early prelims, actually. So now we're moving on to the prelims, which features, the first fight features a bantamweight bout between Peyton Talbot, who is minus 1,600, versus Yanis Gamori, who's plus 800. So talking about Peyton Talbot, he is undefeated, another undefeated fighter on this card, 8-0. He's 2-0 in the UFC, and he's 1-0 in the Dana White Contender Series. He has 1 submission, 1 decision, 1 knockout, and his opponents have been unknown to me so far. I haven't seen anyone that I know or recognize that he's fought. And his opponent, Yanis Gamori, his only fight in the UFC, he lost. He's 12-2 overall, which is a good career record, and he can win it in a various amount of ways. He doesn't have he doesn't have to be a decision, it has to be a submission, doesn't have to be a knockout. So, do you have anything on these guys?
Peyton Talbot, by finish, might not be a bad bet. It's probably still very heavily favorited, and the amount of times a heavy favorite will still lose in the UFC is still frequent enough not to take it. So I'm just sticking away from it, but Peyton Talbot's probably going to win pretty easily.
Throw a buck on Gamori. This is like this is like a Bo Nicol fight or a fucking Amanda Nunes fight, which is fighting some random.
True.
So yeah, my analysis, I don't think there's any shot for Gamori in this fight. He's heavily overmatched. It's going to be a stepping stone for Talbot to keep moving up. with my picks recently, I've been trying to see these narratives, and this narrative has nothing good for Gamorre, in my opinion. I mean, although he only has one fight in the UFC, so if he wins this, he could be propped up. I don't know, we'll see. But with no indication of how Talbot ends the fight, you like finish, but I don't see anything personally for me here, so I'm not going to touch this one as well. And I don't know how long the fight will go. It could go to decision, it could go submission, it could go knockout. So yeah, staying away from this one. Huge odds like this, don't usually like to bet it. So we'll move on to the next fight, which is a featherweight bout between Charles Jourdain. He is minus 125, and he's facing Gene Silva, who is plus 105. I should probably mention all these odds are the Tuesday, June 25th. So definitely could have changed a little bit. It seemed to me like Gene Silva was moving up a little bit in this fight, odds-wise, especially since they're only plus 125 or plus 105 versus minus 125. Kind of weird odds there. So we'll jump right in with Charles Jourdain. So he's got 2 inches of height advantage. He's got 5 years in the UFC. No real wins that impress me, but he's lost against Arosa, who I know, Feely, who's fighting in the next fight we'll talk about, Woodson, and that's it. So he can pull some submissions, but he rarely wins in decision. We'll go to Gene Silva, the underdog or slight underdog. At this point, he only has 2 losses, 2-0 in the UFC, and he can win in a various amount of ways. So do you have anything on these guys?
No.
Okay, so my picks analysis, I think as the odds indicate, this is a toss-up. I do think that it ends early. Maybe take the under in this fight. As for a side, if I had to pick a fighter, I'd pick Silva, but the pick'ems I don't really like, especially when it's 2 guys I don't know, so I'm going to stay away from this one as well. I would lean Silva, but he's kind of unproven in the UFC, so I'm not sure what he can really do, so I'm going to stay away from that one as well. So our next fight on the prelims is a featherweight bout between Cub Swanson, he is plus 215, and Andre Feely, previously mentioned, minus 265. So Cub Swanson is the fucking oldest guy on this card, at least UFC-wise. He's been around since 2011. He's 40. Since COVID, that's kind of where I use the break of whether they're active in the new UFC. He hasn't been as active, but he is 3-2 since 2020. He actually lost to Jonathan Martinez and Goga Chikadze, the only notable fighters from his last 5. So he's beat 3 nobodies in my mind and lost the actual 2 relevant people. 5 out of his last 6 fights have ended in knockout for one of the sides. And then we go to Andre Feely. He is minus 265. So he's got a 3-inch height advantage, a 4-inch reach advantage. He's been in the UFC even longer, actually, since 2013. And he's been more active recently, but also split his last 5 contests. So this is going to be a good fight, I think. 2 guys who have been around the UFC for a while. Vets duking it out. Do you have anything on either of these guys?
No.
All right, well, once again, I'm not in love with anything in this fight. I think it's going to be a good fight, as I just mentioned, between 2 old dudes and veterans of the UFC. Probably UFC fans out there, this will be a good one for you guys to watch. But I don't have a side. I think maybe the under could be in play here, depending on what it is. If it's under 2.5, I probably like that. 1.5, I'm not sure I love that. But Cub has either knocked out or been knocked out in all of his recent fights, so could be something to keep an eye on. I just don't see it going the distance, so those are the only really analysis I have. I'm not going to add anything to my card. So as you can see, we're 1 fight away from the main card through the prelims. Earlier prelims, he's got nothing, I got nothing. It's kind of a nothing burger. The prelims, usually there's something we can snipe out, but this one I'm not feeling anything so far. So with that being said, we'll go into the last fight of the prelims. It is a middleweight fight between Joe Pfeiffer, I don't know, say it a million times. Pfeiffer, so I can get it right. All right, sorry, man. Sorry to Joe if you're listening. He's a minus 330 favorite, and he's facing Marc-Andre Barriault, who is plus 255. So about our man Joe. He's an inch taller, and he has 1 more inch of reach. He's been doing decent in the UFC until he ran into Jack Hermansson, which was a unanimous decision loss in February of this year. And all of his wins have come by knockout or sub. And we will move to his opponent, Marc-Andre Barriault. He has not fought anybody I even recognize, haven't even seen their names. He's been in the UFC since 2019, and his wins and losses can come in a various amount of ways. So do you have anything on these guys?
Joe Pfeiffer is one of my official picks. I think it's pretty straightforward. He's got more experience. He does have some notable wins. The loss against Hermansson is actually a pretty good fighter. He has a lot of notable wins as well, so I think that's not like a huge deterrent. But yeah, I'm taking Joe Pfeiffer.
Just money line or?
Just money line. It is.
Great.
a high minus 330,
I
but
bring a guest on, he takes minus 330.
hey.
All right, so first pick locked in on the guest card. We got Joe Pfeiffer money line. My picks for this one, again, I like Pfeiffer to win as well, but I'm not sure if he can pull the knockout. That would be my only play here. I don't really like betting on like minus 300 things unless they're in a parlay or something, so I'm going to leave this one alone for now. And finally, we get to our main card, which has been, obviously, as I mentioned before, switched up. The last 3 fights have all been swapped around a little bit, so we'll get into those, but these first 2 fights have been around for a bit, so we'll get into the main card. This is my favorite fight of the card, a welterweight fight between Ian Machado Gary and Michael Page. Ian Machado is minus 140, but I've seen him creep up to even minus 160, minus 150. Michael Venom Page is plus 120. So I'll give a little bit of a breakdown of both fighters, but I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about this one. So Ian Machado Gary, obviously he's undefeated. He's slowly moved up the rankings recently. He's ready for his actual first real fight. He's beat the gatekeepers. He's beat Jeff Neal. He's beat Neil Magny, Daniel Rodriguez, pretty handily. So doesn't have the best fight style to watch, but he does have some wins by knockouts and decisions. So cut to Michael Page, the underdog in this fight. I took him last time in, what was that, UFC 299 with Cheeto versus O'Malley.
Yeah.
He beat Kevin Holland. This is his second fight in the UFC, but I think what people forget about him is he's 37 years old. That fight versus Holland, he didn't look like he was going for knockouts. He looked kind of conservative, like he was kind of figuring out the UFC style.
Yeah.
So as soon as that fight finished, I was happy I won the bet, but I was like, there's no way he's losing, or no way he's winning his next fight, because Kevin Holland, I think, is not a good fighter. We'll probably talk. Well, I talked about him, and he fucking fought again at in 302.
Yeah.
He broke that guy's arm or whatever. But I don't think Kevin Holland is an impressive win. Venom Page, people weren't happy with him on Twitter. He didn't look great. So in his former league, Bellator, which I'm not familiar with, he's known for his knockouts. So, what are your picks on this fight? And then I'll get into mine.
I'm taking Ian Gary. I think it's pretty straightforward. He's a better striker. This is going to be a stand-up fight, I think. It might go to the ground and pound a little bit, but most of all, it's going to be a stand-up fight, and I just think Ian Gary's a much better striker. And MVP, his striking style is so weird.
Yeah.
Like he showboats a lot. I think he's going to eat shit eventually, probably in this fight. He's going to try to get fancy, and Ian Gary's just going to piece him up.
Yeah, well, pre-fight, we've already had Ian Machado Gary is wearing purple trunks, which I don't know if that means anything. And then we have Michael Venom Page is apparently coming out to a BBL Drizzy remix of Ian Machado Gary, so he's going to try and play mind games with him.
Yeah.
It seems like Ian Machado Gary, what does he have, like a cuck? He's like a cuck or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, if you're already doing that, I don't think he's going to get fazed by mind games. I think it's in the UFC's best interest to keep pumping out Ian Machado Gary. He had the tiff or fight with Covington. They've been going back and forth with stipulations on their fight, so I don't know. I think my pick here, my biggest lock on the board, I'm taking Ian Machado Gary. I need a bet on it right now, so that before the odds go up, and I advise you do as well. I've been waiting to bet on Gary ever since this fight's been announced, so this is my first pick on my card. And you're putting it on your card?
Yep.
So we're both taking Ian Machado Gary. This is my biggest lock on the board. This is if someone said you have to bet on one thing on this card, I'd say take Ian Machado Gary. I also kind of like Ian Machado Gary by decision. I'm not sure what the odds are on that, but if I had to guess, I don't think he's going to knock out Venom Page. I don't know if Venom Page gets knocked out or if he has like a tough chin or...
I think he might get a TKO on him.
TKO?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll take the win regardless. We're putting that on both of our cards, so there's our first fight of the main card. Now let's talk about the second fight on the main card. We have a bantamweight fight between Mayro Bueno Silva, she's minus 105, and Macy Chiasson, who is minus 115. So a little bit about Mayro. She lost her title fight to Pennington in January, which was one of the most boring fights ever. You remember that? With the
No.
It was the one that I needed to go the distance. It was the 5-round fight with Volk was fighting after. Most boring fight ever. There was a lot of people upset on Twitter about it. So she was the one who actually lost that fight. I don't even remember anything from that fight because it was so boring. She has no really other notable wins in the UFC so far. She has 3 losses in the UFC, so I don't know how long she's been around for. I didn't do the research on that, but she's pulled a decent amount of submissions as well for wins. And her opponent, Macy Chiasson, the favorite by a slight favorite. This is another toss-up fight. She hasn't fought anyone that I know of, but I'm not well versed in the women's fighting game. I know like the big names. She's only, she wins in various amount of ways. She wins by sub, she wins by knockout, she wins by decision. And she fought in March of this year and is coming off that win. So do you have anything you want to say on this one?
I'm not touching it.
Yeah, this is another one I'm not touching. I usually like to bet on the women's fight because I feel like that's kind of some of them are easy bets. You know, it's more, a women's fight's more predictable than a men's fight, but on this card, both the women's fights are just too high variance for me to really say, okay, I'm going to take this. I don't like either side to win. I don't know either of these people really, so I might take it to not go the distance because maybe Vegas thinks it's like a women's fight, so they'll boost the odds or whatever, but I guess I'll have to take a look at the odds. I will have a card of just odds and stuff that I'm going to bet on because I don't have the official numbers, and then I'll have my actual card. Like, this might be something I bet on, but I don't want to give to you guys because I don't know how confident I am in it. Neither of them really have a lot of fights going the distance on their resume, so we'll get into that moving forward. So now we get to the good stuff, the last 3 fights that have been heavily talked about, the subbing a million people in, as I've said like 5 times already, but so what we're left with, this third fight was originally supposed to be Olberg and I don't even know. It was like, well, this wasn't even supposed to be on the card. They added in this third fight for Anthony Smith, who was supposed to fight Jamal Hill, who backed out, and Olberg. I don't know, it's all a mess. But what we're left with is a light heavyweight bout between Anthony Smith, who's plus 120, and he's facing Roman Dolidze, who's minus 140. So a little bit about Anthony Smith. He fights on short notice. He obviously fought at UFC301, Urcheg versus Pantoja. Yep. So this is what, that was like 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. So I don't know. He is one of those punching bags, as I said in the podcast for that. He has losses against Khalil Roundtree, Johnny Walker, who doesn't Johnny Walker suck?
Yeah.
Ankalaev, Rakic, Glover Teixeira. He actually fucking lost to John Jones. He does have an impressive win over Alexander Gustafsson, and he beat Ryan Spann twice, who I think is pretty good. I don't know, but most of his wins can come by submission. That's his main way of winning. As we saw in 301, that's how he submitted the idiot Brazil guy who just let him walk right into it.
Yeah.
So that's Anthony Smith. He's plus 120, our underdog, and he's fighting Roman Dolidze, who's literally fighting on super short notice. I think it was less than a week ago he was announced to be on this card due to Olberg pulling out. So he's on a 2-fight loss streak, but both of his losses were to Vettori and Imavov, who I think are both good fighters in the welterweight division, I think. Or did Vettori move up? I don't know. Anyways, all of his wins besides one are by knockout. So you have a pick on this one, right?
Yeah, I'm taking the dog. I'm taking Anthony Smith. He does have a lot of losses, but like you said, all those people, those were like big name, notable fighters. He did go 5 rounds, I believe, when he fought John Jones. Yeah. So that's impressive. His record doesn't look great, but when you look at the fights closer, it's actually, I think he's pretty good. His last win was kind of a fluke, the guillotine in Brazil. The guy just walked right into it, ended it real quick, but I like Anthony Smith.
Well, I'm on the opposite. I'm taking Roman. I'm going to throw him on a parlay. I don't like Anthony Smith. I'm going to make it a vendetta against him. I didn't bet against him on 301, but I think he's a punching bag. I think, I don't know, they probably just like felt bad for him that they gave him this fight against Olberg, and he backed out, so they gave him Roman Dolidze. I mean, that's how they do things, but I don't know. I'm not in love with, I'm probably the least likely or least like Roman on all my picks. He'll be part of a parlay that I'll reveal in after the next fight, actually. But I don't know. I don't love Anthony Smith, but I don't love the fact that he's plus 120. So Vegas thinks he's got a chance. Clearly, he can pull off some subs. He's been around for a while, so this is my least confident pick. But I like Roman in this fight. So we'll throw that on my card. And is that on your official card, or are you just taking?
That's my official pick, Anthony Smith.
So is that all your picks?
No, I got picks on the next 2.
Are you 5? Oh, you're 5. All right. I was mixing it up. All right. So now we get into the co-main event. Is this 5 rounds?
I don't know.
I'm assuming it's 5 rounds. Seems like every co-main event's been 5 rounds. We have a featherweight bout between Brian Ortega, who's plus 125, and Diego Lopes, minus 150. So a little bit about Brian Ortega. I don't have to give you guys the whole fucking rundown. These are the people you should probably actually know. But Ortega, since COVID, he hasn't been very active. 1 and 2 in his last 2 fights. He's 3 inches behind in height, and he fought in February, so he's coming on somewhat short notice. Who did he submit in February? It was like Yair, maybe? It was Yair, I think.
Yep.
So he submitted Yair in the fight night with Brandon Moreno. So that's a little bit about Ortega, and going to Diego Lopes. He's fighting on short notice as well. Short notice being in the fact that they didn't know they were going to be fighting until 3 weeks before the fight, so a shortened camp. Both these guys fought recently, but not recently enough where it was actual short notice. Diego Lopez was on UFC300 where he beat Yusuf. I bet UFC300 was my biggest betting day ever. Was happy to see Lopes win. I bet on him. So Lopes, he was 5-1 in his last 6 fights. 4 of them have been by knockout and 1 by submission. So far he doesn't really have the resume, but he's a rising star quickly. I remember after 300 there was a lot of hype around him.
Yep.
So what say you in this fight?
I got Lopes. Last time Ortega fought, I did bet on him. I do like Ortega. He's strong as shit. He can take a million punches. He doesn't go down. He doesn't give up. But I like Lopes. I think Brian Ortega, he's gonna try to bring it to the ground. But Diego Lopes is just so fast. He can squirm out of there, and that's just basically going to be the only way I see Ortega winning, is if he can take it to the ground and sub him. But Lopes is too quick. He's going to try to keep it standing up, and I think he's just going to piece up Ortega. I don't know if he's going to get a finish, because Ortega can just take so many hits, but I got Lopes.
So I'm taking Lopes as well. I'm going to pair that with Roman Dolidze for a parlay for you guys. Probably the best odds. Well, we'll talk about the next fight, but I think this fight's gonna end early. Like you said, Ortega has a tough chin, but he does go down. I think Volk knocked him out, or Volk submitted him or something. Lopes has an arsenal. He's a rising star. I think Ortega can always be a guy they can throw in there to win a fight or when they need him to, but I'm not sure this is the best matchup for him. Like you said, Lopes likes to keep it on the feet, so I don't know if he's going to be able to submit him.
He's got good grappling too, though.
Yeah, he can. If he gets taken down, he can grapple. Yeah. And Ortega's going to want to take you down, grapple you, submit you. I'm not sure. I just don't think this is great for Ortega. The odds are indicating they really like Diego Lopes. I think this is a weird Vegas one where you'd think Ortega would be the favorite considering his history, and Lopes is recent rise, I guess. Well, I don't know. I just think I like Lopes in this one, so I'm going to throw that one on the card with Roman Dolidze. So we get to the main event of the evening, a light heavyweight bout between Alex Pereira, minus 150, and Yuri, plus 125. I'm not sure if those odds have changed.
Probably.
Yeah, they probably changed, but as of Tuesday. So Pereira, he beat Yuri. This is a rematch recently in November, which is a crazy rematch to do. What is this, 9 months later? It was a knockout in the second round. I don't remember watching that. Did you watch it?
It was like a knockout. It was more like a TKO. Yuri, Pereira got him. He went down. He kind of was knocked out for a split second, but he regained consciousness, and then it was basically just hammer fist. And I think Herb Dean called it. A lot of people thought it was premature, but Yuri said he was knocked out for a little bit, so he did knock him out. But
I kind of remember it now that you're talking about it. So I won't have to say it, but I'll say it. So Alex Pereira is obviously becoming the face of the UFC right now, stepping in on short notice. All of his fights, besides 2, have ended in a knockout in the UFC. He fought at 300 in April. Notably, that doesn't really matter because Yuri fought at 300 too, but he has some broken toes. Not sure how much we should look into that. Is that affecting? You think that'll affect?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. Pereira's going to keep it on the feet, I think, so it doesn't really matter about broken toes.
Yeah.
So his opponent, Yuri, also fighting off short notice, as I mentioned. He beat Rakic at 300, another big bet that I made, so thank you, Yuri, for that. He hasn't had a fight go the distance in the UFC, which is a crazy stat. This fight's going to be 5 rounds, but I think we both agree it's not going to be 5 rounds.
I don't think so, no.
Obviously, Yuri is a major submission threat. He's looking for revenge, too. He's got the revenge storyline.
Yep.
So I'll let you give your pick, then I'll give mine.
I love both these fighters. These are 2 of my favorite fighters in the UFC. but I'm gonna have to go Yuri on this one. I think he's gonna try to kind of get in the clinch. Pereira's gonna try to keep him at bay with leg kicks. But I think if Yuri tries to get in Pereira's range and kind of make it a sloppy fight, he'll be able to sleep him.
All right, well, I'm once again taking the opposite side. I'm taking Pereira. I don't know. I think a lot of people on Twitter, everyone's confident that Yuri's going to win. I think this is a setup for Pereira to just keep winning. I think for some reason people don't think he's going to win. I mean, you gave a good reason, but like the casual fans think like Yuri's going to win because they don't like Pereira. They think he's boring, whatever.
I don't think he's boring, but I just think he can get knocked out. Yuri's got a powerful punch. He can bring it to the ground. He can knock him out. There's a few ways he gets there, but if he can get in range quickly and avoid any like hard leg kicks and the left hook, then I think he can get him.
That's what I'm saying with Pereira. Like,
it's such a close fight, though.
It's going to be a really good fucking fight. I think we can both agree on that. I think Pereira, like, once he's in range with you, he's going to want to stay on the feet. So I'm just hoping that one of those hands connects. I think there's way more likely of that happening than Yuri taking him to the ground and submitting him or knocking him out. It's like Pereira got knocked out by Izzy, but that was kind of fluky. I think Pereira is going to want to keep it on his feet and stay off the ground. So it seems like to me like no one can even fucking bring Pereira down. He's a fucking monster. So I'm going against. I feel like everyone, the trending pick is Yuri. I got to go against the trend. I'm going to take Pereira. So that'll wrap up my card. So I'll go over the card I talked about, which is things I'll probably be betting on, just so I can have things to bet on in UFC and have a fun night. But and then I'll let you give your picks, and then I'll give my final picks for the actual card. So. Like I mentioned before, Boudet by decision. Think he gets it done. That other guy's punching bag, slob, 45 years old. I think it's going to be a 3-rounder with the new gloves. I lean to take things by decision if I can. So that'll be an early prelim pick to keep an eye on. And then Cub Swanson and Feely, I like to go under and not go the distance. Again, don't have the odds right now, but I'm sure there's some decent odds out there for the under and to not go the distance. Specifically, Ian Machado Gary to win by decision. Well, obviously, I'm taking his money line, my official pick, but I like him to win by decision too as a prop bet. Bueno de Silva and Chiasan, the women's fight to not go the distance and also to go under. Think Vegas may be sleeping on just the fact that it's a women's fight. Usually, them to go the distance is like minus 200 at least. Yeah. So it could be a decent odds play to not go the distance or to go under. Again, I haven't looked at the odds for this, so I'm not sure if the odds are fucked, but could be something to keep an eye on. And then the Pereira Yuri under, which that might be a fucked over under. It's probably like 1.5 or like maybe just 1 round. I don't know. But I think everyone knows that fight's not going the distance. And I don't see it being one of those sneaky fights that goes to like round 3 or 4. I just think both are so explosive that it's going to end early. So those are my like things I'll probably be looking to bet on, but not officially locked in. So with that being said, I'll pass to you for your official picks.
So my official pick, I'm doing a round robin with Yuri, Diego Lopes, Anthony Smith, and Ian Gary and Joe Pfeiffer. I'm splitting it up. I'm taking 2-leg round robin and a 3-leg round robin, and that's it.
So you don't have any? Are those all favorites?
Anthony Smith is a dog.
Oh yeah.
And if is Yuri a favorite?
No, he's underdog.
All right, yeah. So Yuri and Anthony Smith are dogs. The rest are favorites. But slight favorites other than Joe Pfeiffer.
Well, at UFC302, it's worth mentioning, I think every favorite won besides one. So as much as we like to think that there's going to be underdogs out there that win, and there probably will be, it's like it's not always guaranteed. Fighting's a hard sport to bet on. So with that being said, I will give my picks. So I'm taking probably straight up, but I might just do a parlay between Pereira and Machado, but we'll see. I really like Ian Machado Gary, so I'm probably going to make that my max bet of the night. So that'll be my favorite pick. Probably take it straight up. And then the Roman Dolidze and Diego Lopes parlay. Probably get some decent odds on that. As I said, Roman's my least favorite pick, but I'm confident enough to put him in a parlay and put some real money on it. And then Pereira is minus 150, so another one I'm not sure if I'm going to do straight up. Probably have to include him in a parlay with some other picks, but those are the 3 picks I like. I'm excited for this card. Should be a good one. Yeah. You have anything else you want to say? Add on at the end?
Pereira, I'm going to go on a limb, knocked out in round 2.
All right, Pereira knockout round 2. What do you guys think of our picks? Will you be tailing? Will you be fading? let us know in the comments. Thank you again for New Hampshire. Beautiful scenery for our first real outside podcast. And thank you for coming on to talk UFC. I'm sure you'll be back in the future to talk more cards. Always looking for guests, so be the next one on the Dubcast. Take it easy.